Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer in that order. Welcome everyone. Hi, Rollers time, and this week we were basically going to just talk about this card here, which ended in the latest Robert Edwards auction this past Sunday, and there was speculation ahead of time that this card could fetch 10 figures, 8 figures, $10 million or more. Yeah, 10 figures, that would be quite the story, but could even compete for the all-time sales record for a sports card in history, which sat at 12.6 million. But before I reveal what it sold for and where it ultimately ranks, let's talk about the card a little bit. It's a 1914 Baltimore News Babe Ruth, and this is Ruth's very first card of all, 1914. It's actually a minor league card. When he was with the played in the Baltimore International League. He's listed here as a pitcher. He of course was much more famous for being an outfielder later with the Red Sox, but more so the Yankees, and this card predates all of that. It's an oversized card, and the back of the card shows the team's schedule for the games they were playing in 1914. It's graded in SGC VG3, and I've mentioned this in a previous video. I personally feel like the grade here is quite generous. The card seems to have paper loss in the upper right corner, notable edge wear and corner wear throughout, and it looks like there's creasing. Looking at the card just straight here, I would probably guess more like a 1.5 or something like that, but it does sit in the SGC 3 holder. Now, it's an extremely rare card. It's only been graded 3 times in total by PSA. PSA has given out a 1, a 2, and a 4. And it's been graded 7 times in total by SGC. They've given out 2 1s, a 2, 2 2.5s, and 2 3s. There's no other copies in any other notable grading company, so there's only 10 known examples of this card on planet Earth. And the SGC 3 is tied for the second highest grade of all, behind only the PSA 4. So throughout the years, I could only find 6 known sales of a copy of this card in any grade. And there's probably been others, private sales or sales that predate the data I have. But in 2005, the PSA 4 sold for just short of $250,000. That was Robert Edwards auctions as well. And this, again, is the nicest copy known to exist, at least if you go by the grade. And this card has not surfaced since. So whoever bought this back then, assuming they still own it, is looking pretty good at the moment. Now, I was able to find an image of the PSA 4, and I'm not sure why, but this one is blue. As far as I could tell, all the other copies are red, but this one apparently is blue, and much like the SGC 3, I think this is overgraded by today's standards. I don't think this would be a 4 today, given the significant edge and corner wear, and maybe even paper loss in the lower right corner. In 2007, the PSA 2 sold for $200,000. A year later, in 2008, the other SGC 3 sold for just over $500,000. Both of those, again, Robert Edwards auctions. And this SGC 3 looks nice compared to, I would actually rate this one ahead of the PSA 4 or the other SGC 3. Probably the nicest known copy to exist, at least if you go by my eye. In 2009, the PSA 1 sold for $152,000. And then it apparently got reholdered as the same card sold again in 2013. For $450,000. Again, same card here, sold 4 years later for 3 times the price, but it had been reholdered in between. And this is the last known sale of a copy of this card, this PSA 1, going for $450,000. So before the sale a few days ago, the actual all-time record sale of a copy of this card in any grade was the other SGC 3, going for just over $500,000, all the way back in 2008. And again, the last known sale of any copy of this card was 2013. Basically 10 years ago. No, I'm not sure why this would be, but every known sale of a copy of this card, all 5 I just showed you, plus the one that happened a few days ago, all occurred in Robert Edwards auctions. I'm not sure why that is, but they seem to have a monopoly on selling this card for whatever reason. Now, this card was in the news 2 years ago in 2021. The actual card that sold, the actual SGC 3 that just sold, when the fractional shares company Collectible purchased it in a private sale, although nobody knows what was paid for the card. It was never disclosed what the sale price was from the buyer nor the seller. It's all just speculation what was actually paid for the card. Collectible valued it at $6 million, meaning they put a valuation of it on $6 million, meaning if you wanted to buy a fractional share of the card, like you wanted to buy 1% ownership of the card, you'd have to put up 1% of $6 million, which would in that case be $60,000. So there was no actual sale of the card to use as a known sale, but I guess that's sort of a more recent data point. All right, so let's run through what are now the top 5 sports card sales of all time. The Babe Ruth does land in the top 5, but I won't tell you exactly where just yet. Number 5 is actually a tie at this point. First is this 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle PSA Mint 9, and this sold in January of 2021. It was a private sale brokered by Pwcc for, as you can see there, $5.2 million. At the time, it was the world record sports card sale of all time. This card is a Pop 6 with 3 copies incredibly graded higher in PSA Gem Mint 10. None of those 10s have been put up for sale. At least it's been more than 2 decades since one has been put up for sale, and I don't believe any ever have, but perhaps there was one in like the 90s or something. But tied with that is another card that sold just a couple months after this one, also brokered by Pwcc in a private sale, a LeBron James 2003 exquisite rookie patch auto. This is the rookie parallel, serial number out of 23, BGS Mint 9. You can see a 3-color patch, and also sold for $5.2 million on the nose. So those 2 cards shared the top spot briefly, and currently land at number 5. Number 4 is this 1909 T206 Sweet Camelback Honus Wagner, graded an SGC VG3, and this sold in a Robert Edwards auction in August of 2021 for, as you can see there, $6,606,300. There's roughly 60 copies of the Wagner known to exist. Being an SGC3, this has got to be one of the, I don't know, 5 nicest copies eye appeal wise of them all. Number 3 is the Ruth, and that's where it ultimately lands, $7,200,000. The hammer price was $6 million. The final hammer price was $6 million, and with the 20% buyer's premium, the final sale is $7.2 million. Now, on cards like this, the seller often will get a chunk of the buyer's premium. I have no idea what the breakdown was on this card, but $7.2 million is where the Babe Ruth ultimately lands, the new bronze medal winner for all-time record sports card sale in world history. Number 2 is another Wagner. This one's graded an SGC Good 2, and it was a private sale brokered by Goldin, sold in early August of 2022 for $7.25 million. This held the world record sale for just 4 weeks, and then it was topped by number 1 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle, graded an SGC Mint plus 9.5 in late August 2022. This sold in a heritage auction for $12,600,000, the only, to this date, 8-figure sports card sale in world history. Interesting now that the top 4 all-time sales are all in SGC holders. That would not be something that would sort of, you would think intuitively would be the case, but that is indeed the case as it sits now. So there you have it. $7.2 million is what the card ultimately fetched. I don't know if that's considered disappointing for Robert Edwards or the seller. I don't know what their real expectations were. I saw a number of videos and articles about it, how it could break the record and could reach, like I said, 8 figures, and it clearly fell well short of that. But it is the 3rd, highest selling sports card of all time. Now you might think like, okay, the very, very first Babe Ruth card, and there's only 10 known examples, that should be the all-time record sale, more so than like the 52 mantle, which is a much more common card, or the Wagner, where there's 60 copies known to exist, whereas on the Ruth there's only 10. And Babe Ruth is, arguably certainly more significant of a name in baseball history than Wagner, and probably more than Mantle. So, you might think intuitively like the very first Babe Ruth card is a card that should own the record. I would sort of say that makes sense as well, but this card's just not as well known, and it's also it's just not a very attractive card. It just sort of has this, dull red color. He's just sort of standing there, nothing really interesting going on, whereas like the 52 mantle is just such a beautiful image. The Wagner as well has, the bright, bold yellow colors in the background, and I think that plays a big part as well. Just is not as attractive a card, in addition to being sort of an oversized card, so not sort of a standard, fitting in a standard case. I don't know if that has a part in it, but I would guess that plays a role in, what this card ultimately sold for. But anyway, that's it for now. Hope everyone enjoyed tomorrow's regular rollers, and we'll see you all again next time. Thanks, everyone.